morning, happy Friday. Welcome to the Pitch Strike Chronicles. I'm Uncle Tats. I'm here with Luca and Donald. And we saw it was earlier in the week, but Aaron Boone did visit one of the shows on the Fan and had quite a lot to say about the state of the Yankees, his perception of a lot of different takes and opinions of him, how the club is run, the organization in general. So we're going to be getting into some of the topics that were discussed. But before we get too deep into it, if you want, the Super Bowl is coming. So start dropping your Super Bowl predictions in the comment section, and we will go back to them near the end of the show. Also, hit that like button, hit that sub button, and share this out. Help the family grow. Now, one of the big things that stood out during what Boone had said, I want to actually get into the obviously the topic of the title is the accountability, and it just seems like when anybody from the Yankees front office, whether the manager, the GM, or the owner, whenever that topic comes up, it's almost like it's a hot potato that nobody wants to talk about, or kind of hold it in their hand and be like, "All right, I'm the reason that this, it's hot. I'm the reason why this is such a hot topic because, it can't be me. It's always somebody else's fault, or it's just, you're misreading some of the incidences that led to the accountability being in question, whether i.e. base running, the lineups, who's not, Volpe, being treated like, with kid gloves. So I'm going to pass it to Donald. Good morning, my friend. Good morning, my brother. What is your? Did you really take into what? Did you get out? Did you get anything out of what Boone had said?
Yeah, I got a few things. So one of the first things that was interesting to me, I don't know if everybody else in the chat caught the interview, but there was one point where he was asked, "Does he watch the games back after they lose? Does he watch the games back?" He said he doesn't. He only watches when they win, which is interesting. But no, the one thing that actually did jump out to me was when he said that he watches what the players say in the post games back. He watches what they say in the post-game interviews. And I found that really interesting because all it does is just confirm to me that the Yankees are really, really obsessed with their image. They're really obsessed with their narrative. Like, they need to have the narrative absolutely spot on. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way that they act, the way that Boone acts, the way that the players act is incredibly buttoned up, and you can't really have anybody talk out of line. So it is very interesting to me that the manager doesn't really watch the games back, but he does watch what the players say. So that can be taken two ways. One is which I've already described, does speak to the fact that they're obsessed with their narrative. They're obsessed with the public narrative that is portrayed. Another way you look at it is that Aaron Boone wants to make sure that there are no leaks in the locker room and there's no one that talks out of line. That in case there's anyone that says anything that doesn't toe the party line, because I think the Yankees really like to have everyone that toes the party line, which is perfectly understandable. But it is interesting because it just says to me. It just says to me that the Yankees are very concerned about how they're portrayed, and to make sure that there's no locker room leaks, to make sure that everything is buttoned up, and it's not really a surprise. So there's that, and then obviously, what I will say as a compliment to him, believe it or not, I will compliment him. He didn't try and blow smoke up anyone's ass. I did take away that from the interview. He didn't blow smoke up anyone's ass, in my opinion, because and it's a stark difference to the way that Brian Cashman spoke the week earlier, where Brian Cashman basically lied and he gaslit and he pissed on your head and told you that it was raining by saying it wasn't the same roster. Aaron Boone did say it was the same roster. At least he was honest about it. He wasn't trying to argue against it. Yeah, it's the same roster, but the way he said it was, all that matters is what happens on the field. All I want is a championship. All that matters is what happens on the field. We take it from there. And listen, that's the right thing to say. He actually said the right thing. Brian Cashman said the wrong thing by pretending that it wasn't the same roster. That's a lie. That's gaslighting. But at least Aaron Boone was kind of open about it. And he was like, yeah, it's the same roster, but I'm kind of excited about it. And then he was also quite what I will say was also he said he had some regrets with the way that he managed some of the games or some of the situations in June, July, where he wasn't as trusting towards maybe other bullpen arms that he should have been. And he kept going back to the same one, and it kept blowing up in his face. I mean, I'm speaking for him, but that's basically what he's saying. I think that means that he's talking about Devin Williams. They kept going back to that same well, and it kept blowing back up in his face. Instead of maybe going and looking at other options, he did say he kind of regrets that. So he was actually all right. Like, he was all right. Like, for me, of the three Stooges, right? We've heard from Hal, we've heard from Cashman, now we've heard from Boone. Boone was the least offensive of the three. He was the least offensive of the three. Like, he just basically, he kind of sounded kind of accountable. And yeah, he didn't sound quite as awful as Brian Cashman did the week prior. So a lot of my issues are actually with Brian Cashman right now. My issues are kind of lying with Brian Cashman with the way that he's built this roster. This is all Cashman as far as I'm concerned. How allowed him to go over the 300 mil. So, I mean, it is what it is. So it's up to Brian Cashman to put together a good roster. He hasn't. So that's on Cashman. But I don't think he was that bad, in my opinion.
Okay, your thoughts?
First of all, good Friday morning to everybody. I gotta agree with Donald. I think Boone is like the least worrying out of three. He was the least defensive, because we've seen Aaron Boone get defensive with the media so many times before. I think he's calmed down. I think he felt comfortable in the scenario where he was with Carton and doing the WFAN interview. But just the accountability part, Mike, here's what I'm puzzled at. If he says that, he regrets certain decisions that he made in June and July, why doesn't he go back and watch the games? It's almost contradictory. I'm not trying to nitpick, but it's a good point, because it's like, okay, let me see how I can that would improve his decision making, which doesn't make any sense. But at least he's holding some sort of accountability. Well, yes, you could say that, but will it, string forth into the regular season? He could talk as much as he wants. It's the off season. Anybody can talk as much as they want because there's no games being played yet. I mean, yes, Brian, you go farther up the hierarchy, it gets worse, obviously. Cashman's one of the worst, and Hal is the worst. But Cashman, as I've said many times before, is running the organization. So, I mean, there's maybe a part of me that says Boone wants to, kind of tell the truth and say, hey, you know what, this is what's really going on here. But he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
One thing I've always tried to at least give Boone, where his credit is, he can, and we said he can only work with the players that the GM gets him. So it's not like he's constructing the roster. So
right.
When players are brought in, I really believe this past trade deadline, when we received the three pitches with Bird, Duvall, and Bednar, they were in the game that day. That night's game, they were there. You know, I'm like, they didn't even get to see if their uniform fit properly, and here they are in a game that we really needed to win. So, you know, I thought that was, you know, if you're going to use you could use one of the three. I would have used Bednar because he's, you know, a seasoned closer. You know, and let the other guys just kind of get their feet wet a little bit. You know, you know, they probably didn't even know which locker they had yet. You know, and they were kind of rushed in because, you know, Cashin wanted to show off his shiny new toys. You know, and that was kind of the, you know, perception of what happened in that particular game. But, you know, Boone does have a winning record as, you know, as a manager. You know, and if he had, and this was the other thing that was brought up in the interview. You know, when you look at your managerial accomplishments, if you were in another market, you know, you would be looked at a lot more in a favorable manner than in the high pressure cooker of New York City. You know, and he agreed. He's like, yeah, this is when you put on this uniform, your expectations are not the same as anywhere else. You know, so at least he's
Right.
recognizing, yeah, that there is if we don't win the World Series, it's a losing season. Doesn't matter what the record is. So yes, you know, I think we're all in agreement that with this particular interview, there was a lot more of him kind of holding himself to a standard and kind of taking the arrows himself, which is really what you want from a leader of the clubhouse.
Less robotic. I think that's.
Yeah, he didn't actually whine that he's not getting enough. Yeah. Plus, he didn't really whine about at that particular point when he was asked about, you know, his record and why it isn't really viewed as favorable in New York. He says, "Well, I mean, I knew what I was getting into coming in here, so I mean, I know it's about championships." So he wasn't really whining about that either. Like if he really wanted to be a bitch, he could have been like, it could have been like, I know it's not fair. It's probably what Brian Cashman would have done, but at least Aaron Boone was kind of all right with it. He didn't sound like he was wanting too much praise or credit or anything like that. So I'll give him that. I thought he was okay. It was interesting. That was an interesting question, but I also think it's kind of pointless because, of course, the Yankees have a different standard to everybody else. You know what I'm saying? And he also has tons more resources than everybody else. So it's kind of like apples and pears. So it is kind of like a pointless question, but still, he answered it fair enough. Yeah, let's get into this accountability bit. What did you make of his answer?
Tats?
You can take this one, Luke.
I'm trying to remember what he said. I was blank. I was briefly on it on Tuesday. I remember I was watching some of it, but I kind of blanked on it. Need a quick reminder.
You got a clip, Donald?
I don't want to get copyright, but he was asked about, you know, the question whether of the predominant question every single day is with the Yankees and they don't hold players accountable after they make base running mistakes.
Yes. Now remembering.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you think, Taz?
Yeah. Look, because one of the things I was going to bring up is how, you know, he says that he's not going to, you know, kick the water cooler in the dugout to give a perception like he's this big tough guy. You know, he does try to, you know, pertain an image when he's in the public, and I actually do think that he will, you know, because we've seen him lose kind of, you know, he'll snap on the umpires, which we like to see. We like that fire. And I do think that there is some level of truth, a small level of truth, that he can be the same way in behind closed doors. You know, when you reach that breaking point, you have to release it. And I think that he does do that. And I think, it's not to where, he's trying to, embarrass or discourage or discredit any of the talents that he has, but at the same time, when he was, when it was also brought up with, the base running errors, yes, the Yankees did their base running stats were more favorable last year than in the years past. That's the truth, but like Wells, having his mishap, the forgotten outs, and some of the base running blunders. Yeah, sometimes it's just a bad day at the office. We've all had them, but when you're in the public persona and you're on camera, and everybody's watching, it's just escalated and highlighted just that much more, But he's like, it's not like these are things that are just constant issues. But he will talk to them, and he will sit in a room. That I do believe he does. Whether it's he's going screaming, like an irate dad from the 50s, that I don't think he's doing.
Listen, I don't think he had. I was gonna say I don't think he has to scream at the players to get his point across. But the thing is, like, if you're having these meetings behind closed doors, you would see the effect on the field. Like, if you're
Yes.
if it was like Austin Wells or Jazz Chisholm making an error, right? And the people will be like, "Oh, well, you don't know what's happening behind closed doors." Those are the defenders, right? So be like, "Okay, let's see if Jazz Chisholm learns his lesson, and if he doesn't learn his lesson, he should get benched." But you're seeing the problem is you can't prove, directly that Boone's talking to them or not, because you're seeing the same mistakes over and over again, the same June swoons. Everything is there. So when people say, "Oh, well, you don't know what the meeting is like," well, is there any meetings going on actually? Is there any sort of standard being set? And like as I said earlier, I would prefer Boone not to be robotic. I would prefer him to be himself and say, "You know what? This can't happen again." Listen, he could yell at the umpires all he wants. He could yell at Travis Chapman all he wants. He could have private discussions with the players. But at the end of the day, if you're having discussions with the players and they're making the same mistakes, your point's not getting across. And that's a you issue. That's also a player issue. And that's a whole organizational issue. But you have to have that conversation. Again, we don't know if he's had or he's had it. So
Yeah, but what about his other comment where he was like, we're it's almost like he was trying to say, like, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. When they're not aggressive enough on the base pads, it's like they're, the perception, they're content with going station to station because they're waiting for that home run. And when they are trying to make a play happen and be a little aggressive, it's like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you running into all these issues? So yes, where he is right, the more chances you take, the more you're increasing the risk of something going wrong. So like he's not. I don't think he was trying to, sugarcoat it or trying to, hide the fact that they had base running issues. But there's truth to that. The more you take, the more chances you take, you're gonna have more opportunities for few of those plays to go wrong. That's just the truth.
no, absolutely. But it's all about moderation, right? You can't always go for the home run every time, but you always can't go for the stolen base every time. It comes down to baseball IQ. You know the situations, you read the scouting reports, you have all these numbers, right? You have to be able to use the analytics properly and say, you know what, I think this calls for a good hit and run. I think this calls for a suicide squeeze. I think this calls for a sacrifice. I think this calls for, maybe going to the opposite field, changing the approach. I mean, it sounds a little old school, but still use the resources that you have in front of you. You have 20,000 tablets. You have all these numbers. You have all these people in the analytics office. It all comes down to baseball IQ. You can't have the machine make the decision for you. That's just not going to happen.
I don't believe there's any smoke without fire. There's no smoke without fire. And I'm sorry, this has been going on for years. Why are these mistakes happening in the first place? This is the kind of stuff that you deal with, because a lot of these mistakes are not being aggressive on the base paths. It's not paying attention.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of stuff that Aaron Boone is absolutely accountable for, and he's not taking any responsibility for. Why did Jazz Chisholm stand like 10 feet from first base when the out was being made at second? And he just stood there yawning and freaking playing with himself. I mean, that's just laziness, and he got thrown out. That's not being aggressive. That's not trying to get a read on something and trying to get a steal. That's just not paying attention. Why did Wells forget how many outs there were on the base pass? Why did Dominguez forget? Why did Volpe throw to the wrong base? These are the things that only happen to organizations that don't pay attention, that aren't locked in, and they don't take it seriously every single day. So, yeah, I know that the standards are higher here. Yeah, I know that the accountability in general is higher here, but that's no excuse to not be accountable yourselves. And a lot of those mistakes that's been happening over the last few years has absolutely nothing to do with being aggressive on the base paths. I really don't mind if they try and make a steal and it doesn't work out. At least they're trying. But a lot of these mistakes are just being not switched on, throwing to the wrong base, those kind of not, the cutoff man is there in time, or the backup isn't there in time, and it's these kind of things that need to be locked in on spring training, which the Yankees don't take seriously, and they need to get a handle of in the morning of the games, which again they don't take seriously. So yeah, absolutely, I call shit for shit, and that is bullshit from Aaron Boone. Absolutely, he's just trying to, put lipstick on a pig. That's why the Yankees were laughed at by the Dodgers in the World Series. You can't forget about that. That happened, and the Yankees look constantly unprepared for big games. They look constantly unprepared for the big moments. Why? Because they're just not prepared. They're not locked in and they're not being managed correctly. So yeah, on that aspect, I completely disagree with Aaron Boone. And it really annoys me because remember when Brian Cashman said last season that the media holds the Yankees accountable, so he doesn't. So there's not really that much impetus on the managers holding the players accountable. Again, that's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. First of all, the media don't hold the Yankees accountable anymore. They did in the 90s, they did in the thousands, but not in 2025. Not in the modern society where everybody has to be friends with each other and you can't have anybody offended. So yeah, the media are completely different. I mean, you just saw Joel Sherman just screaming at Yankee fans, calling us idiots and stupid, which would be unheard of 20 years ago. So this idea that the media holds the Yankees accountable is nonsense, and the idea that means that they don't really need to worry about the managers holding the players accountable is also nonsense. And the fact that the Yankees are a really good base running team, that might be true, but it has nothing to do with the fact that they're not locked in. And they haven't been locked in a while, and that's why Aaron Boone is a substandard manager for the Yankees. I'm sure he'd be a fine manager elsewhere, but for what the Yankees need, what the Yankees should need, I should add a caveat that, because right now he is exactly what the Yankees want, right? But it's not what the Yankees need, and that's the difference. They want someone who's a friend to all the players. The Yankees don't need that. What they really need is someone that's going to hold them accountable and be tough on them when required. Now, he did say that he has these conversations with players and off air and behind the scenes and in the locker room and stuff like that, which is fine. Again, I don't need him to be Billy Martin running out of the dugout, grabbing someone by the ear and then dragging them into the dugout. I don't need any of that. But as Luke had pointed out a few minutes ago, the proof is in the pudding. If he was having these conversations, why do they keep happening? Because then you would see it if he was taking it this seriously, you wouldn't be seeing these mistakes the next day. He'd be getting a hold of it, going, "Oh my God, why is Jazz Chisholm yawning? Oh my God, why is Jazz Chisholm falling asleep outside first base?" Or, "Wait, why did Jason Dominguez forget how many outs there were?" And then you would have those serious conversations, and the next day you would see them aggressive and locked in and ready to go, and you don't. You see the same attitude because Jazz Chisholm was literally yawning in the playoffs. So clearly there is an attitude problem, and clearly there is an accountability problem because the proof is in the pudding. It wouldn't be happening on the actual field. So as much as I didn't think Boone was that bad in the interview, that did come across as, I don't really buy that.
Comes off as pretty snide. And it's all about coaching. It's all about the fundamentals and the coaching. We already learned that from the World Series. Like, again, it's not always about the spreadsheets, but it's also what you're taught. And yes, it is on the players. It's also on the coaches as well for reaffirming, obviously, the standard. Just because you're like, Donald, you know this. Whenever you watch a Knicks game, whenever a player on the Knicks makes a stupid play, Walt Clyde Frazier will say, "Playing hard but not smart." I don't know if could we apply that to the Yankees, that they don't play smart? They don't.
No, they don't. But also,
that's actually
you
good
also see accountability from the
Frazier.
You also see accountability from the coaching staff, because if a Knicks player struggles for a minute or two, he's sitting on the bench. You know what I'm saying? So there is accountability. It doesn't matter who you are, because you've already seen from Karl Anthony Towns that he's been benched a number of fourth quarters for not hustling. But Aaron Boone doesn't worry about that for players that don't hustle. But at the Yankees, he doesn't bench them, keeps them out there.
Yeah, it's like, like I even said, as much as a fan I am of Jazz, when he ended up having himself thrown out because he wouldn't shut up arguing with the umpire.
Oh my God!
He would not have been in the lineup the next day. You gotta send a message somehow. The mishap with Volpe. Why was he like that? That's the accountability that we're looking for. Not so much are you calling out your players in public. So I think that there could have been a lot more depth to that question, that text, and the response. And I know, limited time on radio. It's not like they had the whole, 4-hour show with him. Otherwise, I'm sure there could have been a lot more depth put to a lot of the responses. But I don't think that he understands when we say accountability as fans, what we actually are asking for. We're not asking for you to scream at them like Donald, grab them by the ear and take them off the field.
Yeah.
But how about not putting them in the lineup the next day?
Although I would have done that when Jazz
I remember the biggest fear I had in Little League was, you have an extra hour of you have extra laps to do. If you guys can't get it together, we're not going home. And practices would go until the street lights went out. We're like, we gotta go home to dinner. Nope. Until you get it right, you're not going home. That's the accountability we're looking for.
Although I absolutely would have grabbed Jazz by the ear when he yawned during the playoff game. That shit is he's getting dragged forcibly out of the game. I don't care what it would cost me. I'm doing that. You don't do that in a Yankee game. Hell no.
Not even
that's
a playoff
the kind
game.
of standards. In a playoff game, you have to set some kind of standards here. But also, here's the thing. Why would they need to ask that question in the first place?
Good point.
Aha. That's the truth. Why would he need to ask that question in the first place? Do you think Alex Cora gets asked about that in Boston, on the radio in Boston? Well, that. He never gets asked that. Does the Dodgers manager get asked, why don't your players play hard? Do they get asked that? No. So why is it the Yankee manager that's getting asked that? Aha. It's because it's real. It's because it's very, very apparent. That's why. He should not be asked that question in the first place. If things were going right, there's clearly something not going right, hence that question. It's actually a very good question, and it was actually one of the better questions that's been asked to Boone in a number of years. It was a good question, so shout out to them. But
what was your
the
take
fact that he was asked
on
that question in the first place should ring alarm bells.
Yeah.
What was your take on his response about the June swoon? You know, and how he was quick, you know, with the injuries, you know, with the bullpen, and you know, when he had first said we're just not finishing games, you know, and his second part to that should have been whether it's with the pitching or the offense. You know, there were a lot of games that we were in that we couldn't put away. We couldn't get that, you know, that tack on run. But they're like, it just because we all know it's coming. And credit to McMonagle, who actually says, well, it's not just this year. This has been a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to kind of held Boone's, you know, feet to the fire a little bit to give a little more depth to the question, depth in his answer. And you never really gave it. I don't think you really. I don't think he skirted over that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, all he said was he wishes in hindsight that he was a bit braver. But I mean, that means that he just basically sat through like 2 months of awful baseball every single day. And at no point during those like 60 to 80 days of just awful baseball that he just decided that he maybe thought, you know, maybe I'm going to change what I'm doing here. It comes across as cowardly, and you know, it just comes across as everything that I picture Aaron Boone as someone that is told what to do, because when he does things on his own, it's just dumb. I don't think he's a particularly good manager, especially for this market.
I think it's a good manager, not for this market.
Yeah, I think he's a great guy, and I think he should. I think he's like, I would love to hang out with him. He seems like a good dude, but you know, when he says things like, "Oh, in hindsight, I wish I was a bit braver," that comes across as a bit cowardly. Because why, you know what I'm saying? Well, why are you not being more?
Why would you even say that?
Yeah, why are you not being more aggressive then? Like, that's the question, because like 162 games between June and August, the Yankees were garbage. That's almost 3 months of being awful. At no point during those 3 months, and you just sat 3.5 hours every single day watching awful baseball. You didn't think, you know, I'm going to change the way I manage maybe tomorrow, and maybe let's try something. Let's try something a little bit different.
Try something new. Yeah.
Yeah. How am I going to talk to my players a little bit differently, maybe? Or maybe I'm going to change something with my bullpen. You don't. You just sit, and then you wait till they're knocked out of the playoffs, and then you go on WFAN saying, you know what, in hindsight, I wish I was a bit braver. No, that's cowardly. I'm sorry.
It is 100%. It's like you're playing a video game, and it's like you're playing MLB The Show, is like Auto Manager or something like that. It's like It's basically he's doing autopilot for 40 to 80 games out of the season, which is obviously one of the more critical stretches, because that's why the Yankees were in a wild card spot this year. So I'm going to say this, like, it almost seems like the Yankees are trying to simulate a player-run locker room, but there's not many leaders, if we're being honest. But also at the same time, you know, Boone says, "Oh, I could have done this, I could have done that." But again, we circle this wagon back over and over again. Him in the organization, he's not being held his feet to the fire, saying, "Hey, you have to hold these guys accountable." It's no like, "Hey, you got to let these guys roll."
Right. Exactly. He's like a guy that's afraid to ask a girl on a date, and he just goes, in hindsight, 10 years later, goes, Yeah. In hindsight, I wish I was a bit braver and I still asked her out.
Hindsight's
You know what I'm
always
saying?
20/20.
Like, go and just. I mean, if you're in that position, go do it. You know, if things are going wrong, make a change. If someone's not switched on, talk to them. I mean, it's very simple stuff. I mean, I'm not asking them to rewrite the managerial wheel here.
No, but it's also
So
comes
yeah,
to
I
Yes.
just don't like him. I just don't like him saying it all in hindsight. Bro, it's been hindsight for years, man. We've not done anything in 8 years. You've had 8 bites at this cherry, bro. You know what I'm saying?
100%. It's the same results. But again, who's holding his feet to the fire in the organization?
nobody.
Nobody.
No, because
No
as long as
repercussions. I was going to say, there's no repercussions. There's no recourse.
None. Absolutely not. Hey,
we got Lynn hanging out. What's going on, Lynn? Miss you.
we miss you, Lynn. We miss you, Lynn. I hope you're doing well. God bless the Mother Superior. Shall we look at the chat?
Well,
Yeah,
I
we
want to bring up
rambled on
something
for
that the
36
chat
minutes and we
really
got to
early
look.
in the show. They were really talking. A really great discussion in the chat about Scooble. And the one. Congrats to Scooble. He beat this. He won his arbitration. That was going to be interesting to see how that played out.
The Tigers.
But now that if the Yankees put a trade for him, I'm like, I don't think that's even on the table for the Yankees. I did one at this point, the salary wise, he would not fit. The pitcher himself, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah.
Load up the Brinks truck and head over to Detroit. But I that's
you'd
not
have to add $70 million to the payroll because if his contract's 34, you would probably need to double that at least in taxes. So that would be like 70 million. Not like the Yankees couldn't afford it, but I don't see that.
I don't see Scooble happening either. I think. I mean, Scooble's obviously the best southpaw across Major League Baseball. The Yankees being stunned. The Yankees being stunned at the price is absolutely hilarious. But if they're going all in on a player, it's going to sound weird. It should be a pitcher. It should be a hitter. It should be somebody on the offensive side of the ball. But there is none. There's no option. They could have went Tucker. I know. Could have, would have, should have. Could have went Tucker. Could have went Bichette. Whoever. But they never did. They had their chance. They just didn't. Again, no power move.
That's what I think that was kind of one of our themes from the offseason. They never took that. They never took that extra step. They never got that wow player. Yes, Bellinger was one of the top free agents on the market. Absolutely, good. Good for the Yankees, but you still left. You should have reached for just a little bit higher of a piece of fruit, which would have been Tucker, Bichette. Guys, Alonso. Where now you don't have to worry about your first base. Now you have the dynamic platoon at catcher with Rice and Wells, and you don't have to worry about it. They swung and missed a lot this all season. But I don't think pitching was really on the top of their radar. As far as the rotation.
And Mike Cashman said it was, which was weird. He said it was. He says that was the main move that he was paying attention to going into the winter meetings, and nothing happened. So they change their own narrative on a daily basis. They can't keep up with their own lies.
I was just going to say
this is a very good point from Len here. Boone and accountability should never be in the same sentence. We will never see it. The Yankees will never demand it. That's the key. The Yankees will never demand it. That's the key bit. Well said.
Donald said the Yankees basically move their own goalposts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
But how do you? Are you that out of touch?
Duran
with the
says here there's.
utilization?
Let me finish this point here. Duran says there are no true potential impact bats, Luca. Tucker's not a real impact bat, nor is Bichette, apparently. And in that case, what would you describe as an impact bat then? In that case, Duran. Just my question. Like, what would you view as an actual impact bat? Okay, who else we got here? Stuff and Thanks. Seems to be they're writing on Volpe and Wells. Will they? The injury excuse for Volpe isn't going to hold too long up. That's a great point.
Yeah,
I think they're misevaluating Anthony Volpe. I think they are.
I also thought that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, say it.
I just say I also felt that they were he wanted to say that look, no job is guaranteed in this game, but he didn't want to say it out loud because when Volpe was brought up, Boone, that's when he started to stutter a little bit, and seemed like he didn't know how to answer the question. So I don't know. Maybe there's not as much of a guarantee of Volpe being an everyday player than they want you to think. It's very much a wait and see.
Well, it is, but at that cost, they've allowed Bo Bichette to sign elsewhere.
Well,
Bichette just made so much sense. It's just crazy. Bichette had made so much sense. It's absolutely crazy. But let's see here. Actually, Duran believes that an impact bat would have been Alonso or Schwarber. Dude, I wanted us to sign Alonso, but the Yankees didn't even have a conversation with him. I think Alonso would have made a whole bunch of. Yeah, we did. I really wanted him. Schwarber would have been great. Unfortunately, there was no position for him.
I wanted them to steal Alonso last season.
What's that, Tats?
Said I wanted Alonso last off season.
Yeah,
we had Goldschmidt. We didn't, you couldn't sign him. But because
I don't understand why the Yankees.
Twice they stubbed their toe getting Alonso.
Mm-hmm. They didn't even try. I wish they did stub their toe. At least that would indicate that they're trying. They just didn't try. I mean, that's someone who's been in New York since forever. He's aware of the market, comfortable in the market, and has performed at an extremely high level in this market. Why would you not do that? It just doesn't make any sense to me. You righty power bat that would step in once Big G's ready to retire, which is probably going to be, if not at the end of this season, in the next season.
And I think she hits it again. This is an unserious team. Don't hang your hat on Cole, Rodon, Volpe coming back magically restored to the best version of themselves. One, I don't think we've seen the best version of Volpe, because if this is the best version of both Volpe, we are in a lot of trouble. But Cole and Rodon, absolutely. I'm not, and we said that, Lynn. We've talked about how, they're not just going to come back and be aces. Cole, yes, they are going to be able to, control themselves and manage themselves in the game with very much extreme professionalism. But you're not going to see. Is Cole going to come back and just be, an ace? No. Over time, he could build himself up to that, but not to start the season. I think that's being naive.
Yeah, not right.
I agree with that. Yeah.
You got to curb your expectations a little bit.
Ocean View believes that the Yankees are still missing another piece. No, we do agree with that. They're missing an impact righty bat. Other teams are stacked. Absolutely. I mean, the Yankees just really screwed up this winter. Like, they had all winter to make a change, to add an impact righty bat. They think that adding a bunch of righty bats for the bench is going to somehow make up for that. I mean, it's just not based on reality. That's just not realistic. And I agree with Met fan here. Cole is expected to be great, but that's not really reasonable. Serious injury and age would have me concerned. It's going to take time. I think it takes time for everyone coming off Tommy John surgery. I mean, that normally takes a couple months, you know? So, yeah, exact, Felix. Imagine how good we would feel if we had Bichette to start the year. No, I completely agree with that. Let's talk about Jason Dominguez.
Okay.
What was your point, Tat? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was going to say real quick, Volpe was supposed to be that contact bat, but he got he adjusted his swing for the home run too much, and he lost his complete identity. But,
yeah.
Like you said, we've talked. Let's talk about Dominguez, because he actually still has a better future on this team than Volpe does.
Oh, let's hope so. Let's hope so. That. So, yeah.
I'm trying to speak
so the rumors are that he's going to possibly start the season in AAA. How would you feel about that? Luca.
I think it's a mismanagement of resources. Yeah. He should be the starting outfielder. We all know, we could go over it 7,000 times, the whole Grisham thing. But yes, you want to get him more. It's difficult because you want to get him as many at bats as possible, but the Yankees barely use him. So his value in AAA. What is his value in AAA going to be? Let's just say the Yankees, mid-season want to go after a starter, another bat. What's Dominguez's value really going to be? It's just going to continue to go down and further down and further down and further down. It's the same replay where you're seeing the Yankees option another prospect or barely give him playing time, and when they want to trade him, his value is shot to shit. So at the end of the day, I don't see this being beneficial in any sort of thing, because once again, we go back to the Trent Grisham qualifying offer that Cashman stupidly offered. I would have rather had Dominguez play out this year, and then you see what he is, because you're actually learning something. Trent Grisham's going to take a major nosedive next year, in my opinion, where this comes.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So you're actually learning something. He actually might progress this year if you give him the opportunities. I said years ago that this was after the World Series. I would have had Judge in right, Dominguez in center, Teoscar Hernandez in left. I think we would have been more than okay.
He also, Boone doesn't see him as a center fielder anymore. He sees him more as he sees him as a corner outfielder. And I mean, the kid's 22 years old, but so yes, there's definitely still time for him to mature into his role and improve. I don't think I will not say, on February 6th that he's a bust. He's far from it. He's had some injuries that he's had to deal with, but we say he doesn't get a lot of playing time, and it seems that way. But how many at bats would you say is a solid MLB season?
500,
something like that. At least 500.
Around 500 is the mark. I mean, he's slightly below that. Not slightly below. He had 381 at bats last year for a 257 batting average. So he did get time. His bat, I don't think, was the issue. And and I'm talking, 98 hits, 10 home runs. He had a .5 WAR, so he had a positive WAR, even though it was a half a point. But he wasn't a negative with the bat, statistical wise. He's got to work on. I think he's got to work more on his weaker side of the plate. I'd like to see him improve more as a switch hitter. We need that Bernie bat. He could be a Bernie Williams type bat on both sides of the ball. He's going to have the power, but he's also going to be able to spray the ball all over the field and just be a pain in the ass in the lineup because of how to manage the opposing pitching. That also comes into play. It's his fielding, I think, is what's really holding him back from being in the lineup every day. I think that's really what it is. And it's also, we saw last year they didn't have him playing a lot of left field in the off season. And they made the same mistake with Jazz, sticking him at third and then going, having him play second, and then go, oh, you're gonna be the third baseman. They're doing the same thing defensively with Dominguez, and I don't like it.
The square peg and round hole phenomenon. Similar thing. They've been doing this for years. Clint Frazier was never a right fielder. They constantly put him in right field. Dominguez, he's a rangy center fielder, has the athleticism. Now, can he call off Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger? I don't know the answer to that question, but you might as well try and see. But once again, square peg, round hole phenomenon. That's what the Yankees have done to their prospects. And Duhar in left, nah, we'll play Aaron Hicks instead. Dominguez in left, nah. Dominguez in center, we'll put Grisham in there. No, Dominguez in left, nah, we're going to put Alex Verdugo in there. Square peg, round hole.
Yep, exactly. By the way, Duhar signed elsewhere.
Oh, good.
Padres.
Who got him?
San Diego, the Padres.
Yes, $4 million, I believe.
That's too much for the Yankees.
Yeah, even though the Yankees reportedly like them. I'm glad that. To be fair, I'm glad that the Yankees didn't sign him because they would have just wasted him. Yeah, Padres 1 year, $4 million. Good deal for them. That's a steal. Getting someone about over 300. It's a good deal.
Good for Miggy. I like Miggy. I liked him as a Yankee. I didn't want to. It sucked to see him go. I know why it happened, but I like to see when the guys that we didn't give a chance to, are able to keep their careers going somewhere else. Same thing with Rev Snyder. Somebody that really doesn't get thought of a lot. That was a Yankee that we had that we let go. Carved out a nice career for himself. And kept himself relevant to a roster. I think Miggy could do the same thing. Good for him.
Yeah. Well, hopefully kicks ass in San Diego and gets an even bigger contract next year. Let's answer this question. The best thing for Dominguez's career is to get traded. Yeah, it's true. You can't be consistent when they sit you after going 2 for 4. Who taught him how to catch a fly ball in the minors? He's been with the organization since he's 16. Yeah, well, I can answer that for you. The Yankees don't have any teachers. Brian Cashman got rid of them all. So you can thank Brian Cashman because he got rid of a lot of the teachers in the organization, and especially at the big league level. There's just no one that can teach them these days. We had them before. Their name was Rob Thompson, Joe Girardi, and Pena, and got rid of them all for a bunch of guys that hold on to an iPad. It doesn't help. When you got young guys that need to be developed, that need maybe a bit of tough love and maybe someone to work them 24/7. You just don't have that anymore because they don't believe in it. And I think it's a mistake, and it turned out to be a mistake. So yeah, that's my answer to that one, my friend. Unfortunately, there's also a question from C Easy. Why did the Yankees abandon international players? They were key to the Dodgers winning the World Series. Yeah, well, Brian Cashman loves to talk about his process. Yeah. Brian Cashman talks about how fantastic his process is. Literally, every single time you interview him, he's going to sit there and go, I love our process. Our process is fantastic. Our process is great. Well, his process is so great that he fired the entire international scouting department, and got rid of all the international players that we were apparently had agreement with. Got rid of them all. So that says to me that maybe their process isn't that good. No,
I was going to say,
but that's what I'm saying. It's sorry. Look, I'll just go ahead.
I was going to say,
Yes.
I was going to go back to your point about, Brian Cashman and the teachers. Just remember, with the real whistleblower in the organization, I think there was two, Clint Frazier and Ben Ruda. Remember that article that was published how many years ago?
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. What did Brian Cashman say about Ben Ruda?
I actually don't remember.
I know they blew up. They exposed the Yankees process.
Yeah, he ripped Ruda. It says that he was a malcontent and he couldn't play. So, and he wasn't worth a shit anyway. So he doesn't care. Well,
J23, yep. And I think we're already on this path. Let's get used to being the perennial bridesmaids and all future runs for the gold. We are very well aware. I do want to close I want to close the show with one more thing. And
do
we didn't get to it.
Yes, we do. We do actually. Sorry, Tats. Yes.
But do want to congratulate the final roster, final player from the 2009 World Series run has retired, David Robertson. Great Yankee. And I think he deserves his spotlight from us. We wanted him back for a couple of seasons. He has decided that he is done. And he was the last active player from our last championship. So congratulations on a hell of a fucking career to Houdini, Robinson, great guy. The High Sox for Hope, all the organizations, the charity work. He was a genuine person.
Hell of a pitcher too. Hell of a pitcher. Kind of miss him. So yeah, we wish him the best in his next stage in life. After baseball. And Upper Deck says we need more D-Rob in our universe. Hope to see D-Rob at our Old Timers Day.
100%.
Yes. Amen. That will be interesting.
I could actually see him being very successful in coaching.
Bullpen coach?
Sure.
Why not?
Why not?
I don't know, if necessarily like a major league capacity, but he just has that demeanor. I think he would do very well as a coach somewhere. Hopefully, that's part of his intention of retirement, and one of his wants. I think he just has that demeanor about him, almost like a David Cole.
And Lynn, what we'll do in the next show, our next show, Lynn, is we'll give you we'll put the list up of the non-roster invitees.
Yeah, we'll give you
because
next week.
Spring training starting next week.
Next Wednesday.
Spring training starts next week.
Yep.
So we've got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes. Should we talk Super Bowl?
Absolutely. It's not the sexiest matchup.
No.
But you got the Patriots, the Seahawks. Donald, do you have who you think is going to win? What's your your prediction on a score?
I think the Patriots are the better team. I think that they're better coached as well. I think Vrabel's a fantastic coach. But the Seahawks defense is really good. I like their defense. And I can kind of picture Darnold pulling something out. And I can see the Seahawks wanting to make up for the Marshawn Lynch disaster at the 1 yard line. So give me the Seahawks. 27-24.
Luca?
I'm going to say 22-7. I was talking to one of my colleagues today. I said 22-17 Seahawks. If anybody's a betting person, you don't have to be, obviously. The spread is 4.5 in favor of the Seahawks, minus 4.5. I think the Seahawks cover with the deficit being 5.
So you're going Seahawks?
Yes.
22-17.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a New Yorker that's gonna get roasted for this one, but I have counted out the Patriots multiple times throughout the year, saying it was just a fluke, when they were going on a run, and they just proved me wrong all year. So I'm not going to turn my back this time. I think the Patriots are going to steal one. I think they are a tight organization, even with the youth, the quarterback. I think that they are going to come away with the win. I think you're looking at like a 21-17 final. I don't think you're going to see a lot of scoring, but I can see the Patriots is kind of, that underdog that's been the underdog all year, never got any credit, yet here they are in the Super Bowl. So I have to ride with them.
Do you know what? Well, you know what? When Tats calls it, Tats is usually spot on. Tats is usually not. That's why we call him Tats for Damas. So
we'll see.
If you're to put your bet, I would put your money on the Patriots, guys. If I were you. Plus, Drake May is the better quarterback. Drake May is freaking unbelievable.
He's insane.
I'm very jealous of the Patriots for getting Drake May. He is fantastic. So he is the better quarterback. I just wonder whether the better defense, and the Seahawks have a slightly better defense than the Patriots, might edge the day. But yeah, Tastradamus is usually right, so wouldn't be surprised if it will be the Patriots. I just can't say it as a God-loving New Yorker.
It was a tough decision.
The Patriots, so.
It is a tough decision.
But
I just can't do it, man. I can't do it.
Right, I'm gonna wrap things up for us. Just remember this Sunday, use an Uber, get a cab, public transportation. Stay off the road if you're gonna go party. Keep yourself safe. Also, if you don't gamble more than you can afford, bet wisely. And everybody that has boxes, good luck to you in your box. Hope you do win. Just always gamble responsibly, especially around this time of year. So with that, we hope you all do enjoy the Super Bowl. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have, hit that like button. Join the chat, hit that sub button, share this out, your friends, your family, the strangers on the corner. Say this to Pinstripe Chronicles saying, wear those pinstripes with pride and play on.